Welcome back to the channel and Old Salem Creek, which is a new publish that you should be able to play right now. Now, this course is one that I've been working on for a couple of weeks. It's gone really quickly after I revamped a plot that I wasn't loving and added much more elevation change and some interest to the land. It's based loosely on Old Town Club. Some of the nods are more subtle than others. The double green is definitely one of the least subtle, but the main feature of this course is both the land movement and the green contours. I've worked really hard with the greens in particular to try to create interest without using too many tiers. There's lots of folds, mounds, little shelves, hollows as well, and there'll be lots to use interest. But the main feature of the course is the land movement and the width that you will find. It should be generous off the tee and will be very scoreable, but equally it will ask you to hit some interesting shots as well, and there's still a premium placed on being in the right spots off the tee. It's just not detrimental if you're not. What I thought we'd do for this one, rather than profiling every single hole, we're just going to play around and you can look at how I would go around playing this and talk through the holes as they come. So, in a function, this is every hole at Old Salem Creek. Now, the first thing you'll notice when teeing this one up is there's multiple tee options. The red is normally the shortest tee on this course, it's very much not. The main tee I would suggest using for a casual round is the white tees. That's kind of got the ones that I most want you to play. But then the other three, blue, green and red, they're all just manipulated and some are shorter, some are longer. Now, the first hole I think should always try and set the tone, and with this one we wanted width, we wanted some bunkers for you to challenge or think about where you're playing, but not really forcing the strategy. And one thing I liked doing on this one was having a green that didn't necessarily require you to be in a certain spot, but more kind of gave you options as to how you got there. So the green being side on and the contours of it mean that kind of up to you to choose how you want to play this one rather than me forcing you to play a certain way. So I think I will probably go partial driver somewhere down the middle. Should leave me a decent wedge in. The only thing I might want to factor in is that I've got a downhill lie, so you can lay further back if you want a flatter stance. But I think that's a pretty nice area of the fairway to be in. We are taking on those bunkers. We could play further down that side for that kind of an angle, but I don't think I really need to. 2 feet up. So I'm just going to de-loft a touch. And that should be able to carry pretty close to... not quite enough club. As you can see, we're finding one of those little feeder slopes. Now, one thing I enjoyed with this one was putting the green speeds way down low. That meant I could have bolder contours, and also I found that the ball runs off greens much less. It's just generally a little friendlier to play. But if you're not close, you're probably not getting very many easy birdie looks, as there are usually contours around. The second hole, short par 3. So you've got tees here. You also have one further back, that's the blue tee set, and one that's very short on the green one. Now for this pin, it's challenging. It's on quite the slope and you've got a cluster of bunkers. So if you want to go for it, by all means, you can pin hunt. I'm probably playing safe slightly to the middle of the green because I just don't want to make a mistake here. For me, this is not a birdie hole. This is just a put it somewhere in this area, and if I make a putt, great. But if I go chasing it, there's a chance I'm ending up in those bunkers, and that's where things can get messy. The putt is also always much more uphill than you think. There we go, we made a putt. Okay, on the third, this was one I struggled with a little bit at the time because I could get the tee shot working the way I wanted. Take on these bunkers, you can take on more and more depending on the wind. You could potentially go over here if you really extend yourself. And you want to be on that left-hand side. However, the green, it was this little spine in front that really made it for me because that factors in how when we're playing a ground game approach shot, the further right you are, the more you're taking on that diagonal spine and it bumps you towards that bunker. It's a sort of subtle strategy that I really like. And I feel like I've hit that better on this course than many of my others in the past. The fairway itself, relatively undulating, but really wide and accommodating. So we are dealing with a slight sideways lie, and you can see how the further left I would have been, this kind of opens up a touch more. As long as I'm not in this side, I've got a decent putt. I don't mind missing down here. The ball's leapt off just a little bit, and we might end up not the miss we really wanted. especially not if it's them rough. Okay. Do you have a little backstop that we can use if we want? I think just somewhere up close-ish. And hopefully you won't find many flat putts here. But that will do. That's makeable. Hey, the fourth hole. Now I liked the way that this one works back amongst past the previous hole. So it's very connected and gives that open feel, but it still has its own space. And I really like the space that this one just had to work with. The green itself, for the most part, it's pretty predominantly back to front, but there are some intricacies to it. There's kind of a little slightly higher portion over on this side. It then goes lower down here. You've got a little fold down the back right that will funnel a ball in from there. So there's different ways to get the ball close. This one, we're into the wind, so it's do I want to challenge potentially going long, which is this I don't really want, or do I play short and leave quite an uphill putt? I think we go somewhere there. Try and hit. Tried to hit a little bit of a partial, pulled it, and that's not a good miss. As you can see, there's a very generous collar of light rough, so it takes a pretty bad shot to be hitting way offline for the most part, which I think will lend itself to playing quite nicely. Should be quite forgiving. Glad I went one more club. You get a fun little recovery shot just bumping over there. Now the fifth hole. Here we're just cutting the corner the opposite direction to the way the third works. As you can see, there's actually room to take it way over the trees compared to what you think. However, if you do take that tiger line, you're potentially bringing in the water if you're a bit too cavalier. So for me, it's always been I want to fade it around those with a little bit of a partial, and it will run out. The further down you are, the shorter the approach shot, which is a real benefit on this hole, but it can run quite a long way if you're short. So I think it rewards someone who's happy to just shape a shot and let it roll. Now the green itself, as you can see, we've got a high back right tier, one of the only real tiers on the course. And then you've got this little pocket up here that gradually feeds down to this little hollow in the middle, and then a false front to be wary of, short both sides. So lots of interest, but it's quite a big target. We are 22 feet uphill and into the wind and with downslope, so there's a lot to factor in if you want to get really close. But hopefully quite forgiving if you're just trying to get it on the green. That will do nicely. Now the sixth is requiring a long shot, and this one probably the toughest pin on there. If you're hitting towards the left-hand side of the green, you're going to have a decent putt regardless. If you are the wrong side of this one, that's possibly going to be challenging. You want to think about where you're playing your putt. And that might seem quite severe, but I wanted putting to be an interesting part of this course, not the thing that just occurs after you've played two shots. I might go find one of those bunkers. Oh, no. But again, there's enough forgiveness that I don't think it's too penal. The worst miss with this pin's probably being on the wrong side of the green. Maybe a little bit harsh on the long par 3, but that's what we're going for. Now, 7, you'll recognise the whole design. This is the core Crenshaw template. Obviously, much more danger in ricocheting down here, potentially under a tree, or way down into the giant grass than playing up here. But if you play up here, you're piling all of that danger onto the approach shot where you're hitting more at that runoff, away from the green contours, and everything is telling your ball that it wants to go left. You're off a kind of downhill stance. It's just very much a hook lie. So we want to be trying to hug as close to the left-hand side as possible. But obviously you can do that by bailing out into the middle and having the ball funnel a little bit further left, or you can just take on that trouble and end up in a nice flat part of the fairway. He says, receiving, not a flat lie. Now this pin in particular is a friendly one if you are clever with how you play it. If you run it through this slope, everything's going to funnel on towards it. If you go straight at it, obviously that can work, but you're bringing in risks of going way left, and then that's where the trouble starts. But again, if you were hitting from this angle, that's a much more difficult shot with a far higher, lower margin for error. Hopefully, oh, I might have put a bit too much on it. Needs to get left. As you can see, it uses that slope really nicely. That's a good way to get close. Okay, the 8th. After a pretty generous par 5, assuming you hit your spots, the 8th is a long par 4. It's completely bunkerless. And with this one, you're contending with a little dip down here. If you can't carry that, that second shot is going to be dangerous. But if you do carry it, you've got an infinitely shorter shot. So we can play out to the right. I tend to play further to the right on this one because I'm well aware of the dangers of being short and left on this one. As you can see, there's flatter spaces down to the right as well. But you're never going to get a perfectly flat stance. That's not what this course is about. There's loads of space to land the ball short. It's a really interesting green complex with this probably the hardest hole location. You can run the ball to a pin down here. For a pin in the back, it's all going to release and funnel that way. And for a pin either right or left, you want to be thinking about being on the opposite side of the fairway so that you open your ability to access to that. This one, I think I might even play a 9-iron and try and just land it short and run it on. It's 20 feet downhill. Slow might... No, it's not going to help. You can see how everything would funnel down had I hit a better shot. Oh well. You still get a cool little chip shot. There we are right in front of the clubhouse. So coming back on 8, perhaps not typical, but it allowed me to find the best holes on the course that I could. 9. As a par 3, this one was dominated by the natural false front that I found, and you might have seen the complete hole design of this hole. Here, I don't mind being anywhere over this side. I just don't want to be short and left. I really want to be up long and right either. So I think as long as we are edging our bets this way, and if we get a fast, that pulls it around a touch. As you can see, very, very perilous and close to ending up way down. But a decent look at birdie. If you don't hammer your putt. Not the putt I wanted back. But that will do. Happy to have a birdie par there. Hey, 10. A short par 4 that might be drivable in the right conditions. With this pin tucked behind the mound, the further right you are, taking on the creek, you're going to get a better look at the pin and you're not having to contend with that front slope. So it's got more than a hint of 11 about it. But that's obviously harder to attain. It's much easier to bail out. You can hit a partial driver down to here if you choose. You can lay way back. And typically I will try to hit a 3-wood somewhere into this area, let the land do its work and take it down somewhere around about here. We'll see what happens. Because I feel like I've got that forgiveness. If I let the land move the ball around, that's the sort of golf that works for me, where I can take on less of the trouble by being careful about where I'm putting it. That also then leaves a full wedge shot, which we can pop a little bit more spin on, contend with that right to left. Oh, the wind might help us as well. So that should bring it back just a touch. Yeah, that's about as accurate as we can possibly be. Just nearly missed the putt. Love that green site down there. Again, you've seen complete hole design videos on that over the last couple of days. Now 11's a short par 4 that immediately follows the 10th, but it plays very differently. Although there's still trouble down the right, this one's more uphill. You don't necessarily want to be closer. And the green itself very narrow rather than the circular type. Definitely not flat around it, and there's real danger for missing this one. I'd say the 10th is far more of a, I guess, a subtle strategic shot. This one's a little bit more You can kind of pick and choose where you go. I tend to want to play to the flatter portion up on the top of the hill if I possibly can. But if you're a bit timid in your tee shot, you can occasionally not miss that and leave yourself with this sort of a lie. Again, everything's wanting to push the ball this way, and it's a green which requires real precision, both distance and direction. With that in mind, somewhere out here and hope. There's the fast. It's just a bad swing for me. Should hold on to the green, I would hope. And that leaves an interesting putt. So we're coming over that spine a little bit. Somewhere out there, but really not sure. Not a bad effort. And I hope that putting on the course is interesting. That's one of the greens, as said at the start, are one of the things I was really hoping to make a highlight of the course. 12. With this one, you're playing over the corner of the trees. You can take on lots of that, but obviously you don't know where your ball's ending up. You can play slightly further, and then there's a bit of a hog's back spine, which will direct your ball further left, which makes the approach shot easier, or you can play way out to the right, and there's all sorts of space. I tend to go over the corner here. If I get that a little fast, I know that generally the land's going to work me around as well. As you can see, the ball's just going to gently kick left. And that takes us into a slightly more optimum spot for approaching this green. Now, the green itself, it's really big, as befits a long par 4, but it is downhill, and you do have trouble right and left and indeed long. So it's a big green, you should be able to hit it, but there's trouble if you don't. Now, because of the downhill nature of this, we do also have this big slope that will funnel the ball round to these pins. I'd say pins on the left-hand side are more challenging, and you want to be ensuring that you're left off the tee for those. I think something down here should do, and I might take a little off it. Gone straight at it when I want to go way left. That's probably the one place you can really miss for this pin. It's a relatively painless 4, which I will take. 13 is a par 3 just overlooking the water. Now here you've got a green with myriad little sections and shelves. So it's really just about hitting the correct portion of the green. None of the other par 3s are quite so compartmentalised. So I thought this one fitted that quite nicely. For this pin, you can be short and you'll be absolutely fine. You can be a bit long and you're fine. You don't want to be too far right. Left is okay, it's just a slightly slippery putt down. So I think hedging my bets again somewhere out here. And we're going to end up on that. Oh, no, it's running down just a touch. Here's where the greens become a little bit tricky. I just don't want to end up off the green. Not a bad read. But again, an interesting putt, I would hope. 14 brings us to the double green for the first time. And again, in the right conditions, you can definitely clear that. If not, you want to be thinking about angle and distance. Now, for this pin, if I'm too far right, that's bringing in this bunker a little more than I would like to a green that then slopes away. If I'm too far left, then potentially I'm hitting more at that bunker off more of a sloping lie. So I kind of want to be probably middle, I think, for this one. But again, the land should help me out and take the ball downhill a little bit. So it's really about playing into areas, and if you're comfortable doing that, you will score well on the course. I think a lob wedge, and the only thing I don't want any part of is this bunker on the right. So somewhere out to the middle, let the wind do its job. We'll have an uphill putt. You can see. Now 15 is probably the toughest tee shot on the course, and although it doesn't look pinched, the camber and the nature of the fairway cutting in means the more you're taking off the tee, the more further you're trying to hit it, the more the fairway narrows. If you're playing with a 3-wood, you've got lots of space. 5-wood, all the space in the world. And actually, you can usually get home with two 3-woods to this very small green banked into a couple of bunkers. It's very receptive to a ground approach. but most people are going to want to hit a driver down. So we'll give that a go. Here, I think that might be okay, but it might also run out of fairway if it kicks left just a touch. Yeah, this one's fine. But you can see pretty quickly how it will end up going right in a hurry. I'm going slightly uphill, so that's probably landing about there. Got a good lie, so trying to roll it on is probably the way. As you can see, it leapt right just a touch off the face, and it might get caught just in that little swale. Okay. Slightly challenging chip shot, but again doable. Didn't hit the part. That's should have been an easy birdie. Well, it's quite a generous hole. The last three, you're heading away from the creek for the first one, so we're hitting uphill to another bunkerless tee shot that looks completely benign. In this one, you just don't really want to end up in the little hollow down here, because if you do, then you've got an obscured view of the green, and the green is angled and contoured to more receive a ball from this direction than it is from here. With that in mind, you can take it right over the corner, you can draw it, you can lay back a little bit. Kind of up to you. I completely bailed out on the tee shot, but hopefully still clings on. If it doesn't quite make its way down, you've got that awkward stance again. But in this case, that's going to be pushing the ball a little bit further right, which kind of helps me work it towards this pin. Now into the wind as well. I think it was the right club. It was just a disastrously bad execution of the approach. Now the green itself, again, has multiple folds and contours. The high middle tier is interesting, and most of this was here before I started laying down the hole. I just had too much interest not to use. Now this putt is hit and hope stuff. As long as it reaches that slope, good feed down. Very close. You will definitely hole some absolute hero putts on this course from time to time. Now 17, again, a short par 4 that is very downhill as well. So this one tempts you to take on as much danger as you can off the tee to leave as little as a wedge in to the green that's playing just on the other side of the creek. Knowing my tempo, we're going to try and hedge our bets a little bit further left. Was a good decision. So we've just about made it around the corner. That then means we've got this slope, and we've got to factor in elevation. When the pin is close to the water, that's a really dangerous shot. Can obviously lay back if you want, but I think few people will do that. For this pin, I think a 6 iron is probably good. Might need to carry just a little more. Oh, got a very lucky bounce, and now it's in a great position. Even so, it's a tricky part, which we've said you will have heard a number of times already in this round. Still in playtesting, so we might eradicate a couple of these double breaks. There we go, and 18 to finish up. So you see the clubhouse in the distance, it takes you back. These bunkers on the left-hand side, you get a slightly better angle to most pins if you challenge and play close to them. If you don't, you're going to have slightly obscured vision by that bunker in front, and a trickier angle of approach. For this pin, it actually sits in a really interesting bowl, so you can bounce the ball short and on. I don't think I need to take on the bunkers quite so much, so I don't mind playing. Well, we've got a slow, so pushing us down this way. But I don't mind playing a little closer here, because I think I can get around this bunker and just use this contour to work the ball in. Apart from the very fast. Even then though, it's a pretty, I hope, easy up and down. Even if short, the ball should roll on and release. And it's a pin where most of the slopes funnel the ball towards rather than away from. And there we have it. Casual -8 where I think I've left some shots out there. It should play pretty forgiving, but that's Old Salem Creek. I think one of my more interesting courses, certainly one of the more friendly that you'll find, and I hope you really enjoy playing it and have some interesting shots out there. Like I say, the tees that you've got, looking at this one, you can see how the manipulation works. The back nine obviously considerably longer than the front, but the front has the stingier par. If you are choosing to play just the one round, play off the whites, but then red, green, and blue will play interestingly and really vary how the course is set up. Hope you enjoy, and see you again soon.